Here's a number I had to look up twice. 59%. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 59% of households headed by a non-citizen is on at least one major form of welfare. And it doesn't get much better for immigrant-headed households. That would be 53% overall. Now, the Trump administration looked into a potential solution about all of the immigration fraud that has been going on and the welfare scheming that has been propagated by Democrats and getting foreigners hooked on welfare. That's a major affront to the American dream. That should be the reason that they're actually here. Well, in January, the State Department suspended immigrant visa issuance for nationals of 75 countries while it reviewed what are known as public charge risks. A federal judge just struck the policy down. And the reason why takes us into one of the strangest features of America's immigration system. Now, U.S. District Judge Jeanette Vargas, a Biden appointee, ruled that Secretary of State Marco Rubio exceeded his authority when the State Department ordered consular officers to stop issuing immigrant visas to nationals of 75 countries that were deemed to have a high risk of public welfare usage. So, how do we get here? Well, the administration didn't just pick these 75 countries out of a hat. It looked at government data, measuring public assistance used by immigrant households by country of origin. Countries above a 30% household threshold were generally included, with some exceptions for foreign policy reasons. Well, the basic idea was pretty straightforward. If the United States is going to admit somebody permanently, the government has a responsibility to the citizens to make sure that the person is likely to contribute to American society and the overall economy and not be a public drain on our resources. So you might think this is common sense. Well, to the Democratic Party, it's racism. Of course, that is their excuse to shoot down any practical, common sense policy that benefits the American people at this point. And it is a long-running farce that was pushed by Judge Vargas because she didn't just rule that the government can never consider welfare dependency. Her ruling turned on something else: nationality. The Immigration and Nationality Act says that with certain exceptions, no person can be discriminated against in the issuance of an immigrant visa. And that's because of those characterizations of race, sex, nationality, place of birth, or place of residence. So, Vargas looked at State Department policy and essentially said, you aren't evaluating these applicants merely as individuals because they're using up our public welfare. No, you're reviewing this because of race, sex, nationality, or the places they're coming from. Now, obviously, this is a facetious argument. It flies in the face of logic and reason and prudence. But rogue judges do not care. And so you might be thinking right about now, wait a minute. Didn't the Supreme Court already say Trump could restrict immigration based on nationality? Yes, that's not your imagination. That's what they did. But in this case, Trump v. Hawaii, it was Trump's first term travel ban case. The Supreme Court upheld the president's authority to restrict the entry of certain foreign nationals into the United States based on national security reasons. So Vargas is pushing forward the old playbook that we know as Cloward-Piven. The Cloward-Piven strategy is a 1960s radical playbook meant to overwhelm the system with public welfare recipients and crash capitalism so that we have a socialist one-party regime that dictates all of our economic decisions from on high. That's right, in a command economy, Marxism, socialism, communism, call it what you like. It's them deciding for you how you are going to expend your labor, what benefits you're going to get out of it, if any, and also a complete suppression of your individual rights. So Vargas, being the good little activist judge that she is once again impeding the progress of justice in this country. She's violating the spirit of the Constitution that gave the President of the United States authority over foreign policy matters such as immigration, should they prove to be policies that are a threat to national security and $40 trillion in debt, you can bet that all unnecessary burdens, including public welfare by foreign-born immigrants, that is an unnecessary risk to national security at this point. So, welfare, it is an existential threat to our way of life at this point. The corruption and the fraud, we're talking trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars at this point. The Democrats, of course, put this system into place intentionally. You might recall the 1965 act, the Hart-Celler Act. That's when Ted Kennedy and LBJ sold us a bill of goods. They wanted to make sure that certain members of American society kept voting Democrat for 200 years. And that's what they've done. They've institutionalized a welfare system that isn't intended to help the least capable members of our society help themselves, but rather to foster a means of government dependency that will provide a disincentive for opposition to rein in government spending, because what you have is you're putting people in a domain of losses. Any of you out there who remember prospect theory from psychology or political science, that's exactly what they're doing, because people get extremely angry psychologically when you take things away from them in their perception more than dangle benefits out in front of them like incentives. So this was really a breakthrough in psychological theory and human behavior, and it explains a lot, because what they're doing is trying to get government dependence on, and then if you take the money away, they riot. And that's really the situation we're stuck with at this point, whether it comes to mass immigration or whether it becomes to the mismanagement of our inner cities, such as Gary, Indiana, and Memphis, which have seen blackouts gone on for almost 2 weeks now, and they want to blame environmental racism or structural racism or some kind of nonsense, but actually it's because the institutions are failing them. They keep putting in charge woke leftists, and also black voters are basically voting for other black representatives in some of these inner cities, and nothing is changing for the better there. It's just getting worse, and they just keep scapegoating people who don't live there, structural racism, the system, the man, whatever you want to call it, when actually there are other cities in the United States that are managed by Republicans that are a lot better. The crime rates are down, economic activity is up. They're being managed properly, and people live a better quality of life there. It has nothing to do with race. It has to do with human beings and the way that they respond to certain incentives and disincentives. And if you have a disincentive to work, well, you're less likely to work. If you're being punished for working hard, well, you're less likely to work hard. That is the very simple game that Democrats have been playing in this country for generations. Ever since the failed war on poverty, it's only made things worse in America, more poverty, and it is more expensive for the middle class right now. And so, of course, it is disincentivizing being a member of the middle class. It is slowly eroding the American dream in this country. And a part of that is they are importing future voters, whether it be illegal aliens or H-1B visa holders that are taking jobs away from potential workers, especially in the STEM fields. And of course, our public education system is run by Democrats, so people are not learning science and math and technology the way that they should be. I'm not sure if this is all on purpose or not, but it certainly has a fringe benefit for Democrats that Americans are now struggling to pay their bills, and it is becoming harder to be a member of the middle class. To own your own home, I think like under 30, the rates of home ownership have crashed out. And so the American dream is getting further and further away in our view, and it's becoming much easier to listen to the words of Marxist Democrats who promise you at least subsistence living, all at the expense of you having autonomy and freedom. And I think it's a dangerous trap, and Americans have fallen into it. And the only way out is to be reining in the fraud and the corruption to begin with, and then to start reforming these cities where urban Democrats have essentially imported a lot of foreigners, and they have pandered to communities in the cities in a way that's harmful to everyone involved, okay? It hurts the economy, it hurts those communities, and we need to do a better job of revitalizing the economy, and We're not going to be able to spend our way out of this situation. We have to slush the corruption and the funding of government programs, the NGOs, public-private partnerships, the works, and the Pentagon too. If you're on the left there, I'll totally agree with you. The Pentagon, they've failed audits how many times? Trillions of dollars in waste. Military bases all over the globe. Like, what is that for? Why are we still fighting wars overseas when we can't even get our own house in order? It is absolutely absurd. And it's a high time that we do something about it, because both parties are collaborating in a sense to put forward this system. There's plenty of Republicans who are pro-amnesty. In Florida, for example, even it's really wild, and we should not have any pro-amnesty Republicans. These Chamber of Commerce conservatives, they're selling us out. And all of these ideas, like the Cato Institute, for example, saying that we should have open borders. Well, guess what? That's in a perfect world where there's no public welfare like we have right now, and that's pretty far away. I think most Americans don't begrudge people who are just disabled or elderly from getting some public assistance. I think that's not the argument. It never has been. So we need to reform our immigration system, and hopefully the Supreme Court will come in, put this rogue judge back in her place, and overturn this, and we can get a visa ban for peoples who are coming here who disproportionately abuse our public welfare system. So weigh in with your own thoughts about this story. We always appreciate hearing from you at the Becker Brief.